And some are introducing a new measure called the double bubble. The strategy allows households who have been taking health and safety precautions to socialize with one other household. But there are still rules. The bubble sharing is not interchangeable, and both parties must agree. The idea was first floated in New Brunswick and has popped into Newfoundland and Labrador's reopening plan as well. And for more on this, we're joined by social worker Gary Dierenfeld in Keswick, Ontario. Gary, thank you so much for joining us. So, what social risks does the double bubble pose for families?
Well, you have to appreciate we miss our families. And that could be the grandparents to the grandchildren. It could be me, myself with my sibling. It could be aunts, uncles, and cousins. So the double bubble is all about my family choosing another family where we can connect and meet physically. So what are the risks socially? Well, you know what? How do I choose? And if in choosing this family to live with, does that have a negative repercussion for my relationship to that family?
So, what advice would you give families feeling this strain? There's this strain of wanting to be with other families, but then there's a strain of how do I choose which family to be with?
Yeah, good question. So how do we make these choices? The whole idea of the double bubble is to help those folks whose mental health may feel a little shaky. We miss one another. So by having that connection, we're social creatures. Hopefully it helps allay things like depression and anxiety. So we want to have an understanding of who in our family may be vulnerable and therefore who may benefit more because of this. Now, assuming all other things being equal, we may have to choose by other criteria. It could be a coin flip. Or we can alternately say, well, if I'm going to meet with you and you're going to be my double bubble, what about the rest of the family? Maybe we can have something special to, in a sense, compensate after when we're allowed to get together.
What's your advice, though, for someone who has perhaps been left out of the family bubble, or maybe doesn't have enough family bubbles going around to be in one?
Well, if you're feeling left out and you're feeling badly about that, speak up, reach out. We want other family members to reach in. We want partners to reach across. What I mean by that is we need to still find our ways to connect. And if possible, if you're the family in the double bubble, don't gloat, don't lord it over others, and make contact with the persons who have been left out so that they might enjoy your what you've enjoyed vicariously. Share it. Share the joy. Share, I wish you could have been there with us, so that we still feel valued and in one another's thoughts.
Gary, what about roommates? How do roommates decide?
Well, you know what? How do roommates decide? You each have to make these terrible decisions between who's going to be in that double bubble with us. And again, that may be a coin toss. It may be on the basis of mental health. But for goodness sakes, don't toss your roommate to the curb. But this is where compassion and empathy and understanding come into play. And sometimes you're going to make a difficult decision where you say, well, maybe neither of us at this time, because we don't want either of us to feel left out.
Okay. Gary, thank you so much for joining us today. Social worker Gary Dierenfeld from Keswick, Ontario.
All the best.
Ontario